Welcome to another exciting episode of Grammar with Miss Rose. Yay! Hearts everywhere. This is one of the greatest grammar videos you will ever see because it's all about irony and puns. But did you know there are 3 different types of irony? That's what we're going to talk about today. So, irony is a tough thing to define, and lots of people actually argue about what irony is. So, in general, the best way to think about it is that irony is a discrepancy, which means, there's some issue, it's not right? Some trouble between expectations and reality. So, an issue between what is expected to happen and what really happens. But there's 3 different sort of types that this can be, 3 different ways that expectations and reality can have this issue. So there's your first example of irony there. So here's a list of things I hate, and the list of things that he hates are vandalism, irony, and lists. Hilarious. There's a discrepancy between the expectation, which is that he would not be vandalizing, being ironic, or listing anything, and reality, which is that all 3 are true. So the first type of irony that I want to talk about is verbal irony. This is your favorite one to use and often encountered, but you may not recognize it. So verbal irony, verbal meaning speaking, are statements that imply a meaning in opposition to their literal meaning. So when you're implying one meaning, but in reality it means another, this is often referred to as sarcasm, right? There are a lot of people who would argue that verbal irony is not sarcasm, that there is some sort of philosophical difference between the two. I don't care. Anyway, I'll get to my rant about that later. For now, check out our lovely Calvin and Hobbes. Love these guys. And Calvin and Hobbes, whoa. Hey, I don't want to move you. Okay, Calvin and Hobbes are a great example of verbal irony in this case. Hey, I'm trying to write his name. Jeez. So Hobbes asked Calvin, is it a right to remain ignorant? I don't know, but I refuse to find out. That's ironic because he's refusing to find out about ignorance, which is refusing to find out about things. Get it? Get it? So he's implying that he doesn't want to know about being ignorant, but Hobbes is actually asking him about ignorance. Anyway, the trouble with irony is it's hard to define. It's hard to explain, right? But Lemony Snicket is one of my favorite authors, and he's really good at verbal irony. So here's a quote from one of his books. Today was a very cold and bitter day, as cold and bitter as a cup of hot chocolate. If the cup of hot chocolate had vinegar added to it and were placed in a refrigerator for several hours. Meaning, as cold as a cup of hot chocolate, what? He's implying that his cup of hot chocolate is cold and bitter, and then goes on to be sarcastic about just how cold and bitter. Verbal irony. Discrepancy between what is said and what is meant. That's my best shot. Okay, a further example here. This is a comic by a website known as The Oatmeal. They draw these sort of strange comics, and The Oatmeal's creator is actually a pretty nerdy English dude. So he does some comics about grammar, and they're kind of funny. You can look this comic up in its entirety. However, I've only chosen pieces because there aren't always language that would be professional in, teaching material. But anyway. So verbal irony, they define it as when a speaker says one thing but means another, right? A discrepancy between the literal and what they mean in the literal meaning. So when this guy says to this guy, sure, I'd love to go crawl inside that rotting goat carcass and find your missing wallet. He's not actually very keen on crawling inside the dead goat, and therefore this is verbally ironic. So here we get to the rant that I have and that will continue throughout this lesson. Yeah, according to some literary people, sarcasm is not irony. Others say it is. Whatever. The definition and usage of verbal irony is not important. What is important is that while people are arguing back and forth about this stupid thing, the rest of us are doing more interesting things like eating fried food, stargazing, and riding jet skis. Heck yeah, Ursa Major, minor. Woohoo! So the point being, can you recognize when something is different than what is meant? Call it sarcasm, call it irony. Can you see it? Here's our second type of irony. It's called situational irony. This is most often what we think of when we think, oh yeah, irony. The people going to the gym, going up the escalator. Ha ha ha. Yeah. Actions have a different or an opposite of intended effect. There's some element of a reversal of circumstances, reversal. Whoa, a reversal of circumstances here. So here's this reversal of circumstances would be the boat called No Worries is sinking. Water. This one I love because it's Sherlock Holmesy. So there's Sherlock Holmes smoking water or wallpaper with a no smoking sign on it. Harry Potter is also a great example, but I'm not going to spoil it. So Harry spends the whole book series thinking he must kill Voldemort. But if you think about what happens in that 7th book, especially towards the end, there is a reversal of circumstances, wink nudge. Here's my friend the oatmeal again, defining situational irony. Situational irony is when something happens and a reversal of expectations occurs. So it's the same definition we talked about. So here is my friend in the metal outfit. Every time there's a lightning storm, vicious sea bears come from the Pacific Ocean and launch an attack. Luckily, during tonight's storm, I'll be wearing this suit of armorer's protection, wahaha, and I'll be standing on the roof so I can see them coming. Bzz. Right? Metal on a roof. Lightning, storm, right? He thinks he's safe. Reversal of circumstances. Womp womp. Anyway, reversal. The armor was intended for protection. That's what ended up causing him harm. Oh, wait. Hey, that's not ironic. The oatmeal is an idiot. Once again, everyone will always argue irony. So here's what I'm talking about. Things that are not situational irony. Here's another piece of the oatmeal which really does it best. If you've ever heard Alanis Morissette's song Ironic, and if you haven't, boy oh boy, do yourself a favor and listen to that classic. Whoop whoop. She wrote this whole song, called it ironic, and then nothing in it is irony. But once again, people argue. So for example, it's like 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife. She also says it's like rain on your wedding day. These are just like unfortunate coincidences, right? There's no role reversal. It's not like you had a contingency plan for the rain on your wedding day and decided that actually you don't need it because the forecast says it's going to be gorgeous, and then suddenly, boom, lightning storm, sea bears. There's got to be more than just misfortune. So here you go. Why isn't it ironic, just an unfortunate scenario? But then this. Though one could argue that by having so many spoons, you'd expect there to be a knife which qualifies as a reversal. Ho, ho, ho. Obnoxious argument is the very essence of irony. See, anyone can argue anything about this. But can you recognize it? And if you see it, can you say, no, it is a reversal of circumstances, or it's not? And then finally, the one that is the most important to us in Romeo and Juliet, and the reason that I'm taking the time to actually teach this is called dramatic irony. Brought it up before. This is when readers or the audience know what the characters do not. So we know and they don't. It often leads to tragedy or humor or discomfort. This is, ORT. I can't spell and think. This is when you're sitting in front of the TV and you're like, oh God, I can't watch this. I got to change the channel, or I got to cover my eyes. Because sometimes it's just so uncomfortable to watch dramatic irony unfold. It really gets at us as a species. So your example would be, obviously, we know they're going to die, but they do not. And we have known since moment one. Very, very, very soon, we are going to know exactly how they die, and neither of them is going to know. So the Titanic is really like the greatest natural example as of now, right? Because everybody, or actually technically at the time, the Titanic was situational irony because it was literally called the unsinkable ship. It was written all over the place, and then it sunk, right? Maiden voyage. Now that we look back on it, it's become dramatic because we know, like watching Titanic with, I gotta draw Leo. There he is, right? And Rose, my heart will go on. We know now that they gonna die. He's gonna push her, they're gonna fall into the ocean, but Rose is gonna live a happy life, and Miss Rose is gonna cry in the movie theater, and it's gonna be like the movie of the generation, blah, blah, blah. Here's a kitty cat with some fishes. First he warms our bowl, and now he's feeding us, and you thought he wasn't friendly. Ha 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 ha. Gonna die. Gonna die. And we know it. Now, in his perspective, he's living it. He might be able to call that situational irony, but we as the audience see it from the outside. See how it can be classified two different ways and you could totally argue about it? That's why irony can be kind of dumb sometimes. Oatmeal Baby, this is my favorite one. It's when a narrative in which an event occurs whose significance the audience knows and the characters don't. So for example, Romeo and Juliet. When the characters think that Juliet is dead, but the audience knows she's only knocked out by a sleeping potion, it's only a light spoiler. Or this scene from the upcoming film, Mayonnaise Volcano Warriors. I don't know, dude. That looks really hot. It's not. It's just brightly lit mayonnaise covered with orange food coloring. Don't be such a boob. Jump in and have some fun. Oh, God! I'm burning! Oh, God! In this example, the audience gets big lulls because they knew it was lava the whole time. Just ignore this part. This is not real. So to review, irony, dramatic irony is when we know what we know. Miss Rose, what are you thinking? What the characters don't. Situational irony is when situations have the opposite effect of intended. And verbal irony when words are said with the opposite meaning. So your key for dramatic, you just got to think Romeo and Juliet, and you hopefully will remember. Situational has to have that reversal of circumstances. Reversal of circ. And it is not misfortune. Unless the misfortune arises because of reversal of circumstances. And then verbal, generally, sarcasm. Those are sort of your three ways to remember. So this is a good slide to take sort of a picture of if you want to remember or, that kind of thing. Puns. Guess what, guys? There's only one slide on puns, and I'm not really going to make you practice it because I have just this strong feeling that you are very good at them, huh? And I could spend this whole recorded video making puns about puns, but instead I will go through this in like 12 seconds. Puns. Ugh. The reason we say ugh is because they are called the lowest form of humor. That is a quote from the New York Times. It is well considered that puns are just playing with language in a way that it ends up like an attempt at funny, and somehow we just don't think it is. So generally it's words with double meaning due to how they sound or how they look. There's actually different types of puns based on like if they're the same word, or sounding if it's like different words but it's close, so but what matters is that they're all puns, types of puns. That's dumb. I hope no one ever asks you to know that. I've been to the dentist so many times. I know the drill. Ha 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 ha. Same word, right? Dentist. So it's this is a looking pun. Okay. Always trust a glue salesman. They stick to their word. I went to a seafood disco last week and pulled a muscle. Lol. This is a sound pun because muscle and muscle, right? Two different words. So I gave you technically two looky puns and a sound pun. But, the point is puns. Do ho 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 ho. Practice. So as I said, you're not going to get a worksheet on puns. You're just going to get some work having to do with irony today. Your instructions for this are clear. If you have watched this video through to the end and you're listening to me right now, please put a big star at the top of your paper. That allows me to give you a few extra credit points, right? Pretty good, pretty good. Don't tell your neighbors or your friends. If all of you have stars, nobody gets extra points. Because I know some of you won't watch this to the end. So once you got your star on your paper, I'd like you to take a couple sentences per irony to explain what it is. You'll get situations. You'll have to tell me if it's verbal, situational, dramatic irony. And I would like you to explain how you know in at least 2-3 sentences, please. And yeah, that has been Grammar with Miss Rose. Woo!